Welcome back to Trib Sports After Dark, our prep football recap show. I am Tribune Sports Editor Stefan Wiebe, joined as always by Sam, Trevor, and Cody. And with that, we will jump right into our area prep football scores. Rigby beat Lewiston 46-0. Omak over Clarkston 42-0. Lakeland over Moscow 49-0. West Valley over Pullman 21-3. Freeman over Asotin 58-14. Colfax beating Chewelah 46-6. Potlatch over Deary 60-20. Pomeroy over Garfield Palouse 32-18. Kendrick over Lapway 90-0. Logos beating Prairie 54-12. Kamiah over Clearwater Valley 54-0. And then West Jefferson over Grangeville 34-6. So a bit of a rough week for Tribune area teams.
Week of the blowouts.
Yeah, a lot of blowouts, a lot of shutouts. And we're going to just start with talking about the big four real briefly. Between Lewiston, Clarkston, Moscow, and Pullman, only 3 combined points scored, and those came from Pullman. Just to open it up to you guys. What do you guys have to say about the Lewiston, Clarkston, Moscow, and Pullman teams? It's kind of struggling this week.
Yeah, we call those the area big four. Those are the quad cities, Moscow, Pullman, Lewiston, Clarkston. They are the bread and butter for the Tribune, so dark times for them are dark times for us.
Yeah, we saw Lewiston go to the play, or actually where the Vandals will play this week, at the Washington Grizzly Stadium, home of the University of Montana Grizzlies in Missoula, Montana. So that's kind of the middle ground, I guess, between Lewiston and Rigby. Rigby of the 6A ranks in the state of Idaho. Rigby, of course, it was a tough test for Lewiston. Rigby's ranked number 3 in the most recent 6A Idaho State media poll. And so it was going to be a tough test for Lewiston. But we just saw the Bengals, win a tough test, 33-28 over visiting Bothell, a larger school from the Seattle area. And so, you thought that would bode well for them. It turns out that Lewiston was actually down their quarterback, Dallas Richardson, again, who's their second string quarterback. So they had their third string quarterback, Blaze Hepburn, in. They had just about 15 yards passing and couldn't really get much going offensively at all. And so really tough game. Thank goodness for Lewiston is they have a bye week, and then they play Sandpoint for Senior Day the week after that. And the hope is, I heard from Lewiston insiders that they hope to have both quarterbacks Mason Way and Dallas Richardson, who one or both could contribute to that Sandpoint game back by that Sandpoint game, October 10th.
I think the roughest loss out of all of this might be Moscow, though.
Yeah.
Moscow's been kind of on a roll recently.
The Bears with a 4-2 record still, 4-1 obviously prior to this game.
Yeah, I mean, losing to Lakeland 49-0 is pretty crucial.
Although, as was pointed out to me when I forgot momentarily, the Bears are actually not in the same league as Lakeland in football. They play
Not
a division
anymore.
down. Yes. So
Used to be.
Lakeland being a larger division foe, something they can take a little bit of solace in.
Still, I agree with that totally, absolutely. But still, being shut out is pretty significant to any team, I would say. One thing, talking about Peyton Brannicky, the assistant coach, he was talking about, I asked if there's any individual statistics that really stood out, and he said no. We just kind of played bad. He said it was a physical game, and they're a really good ball club, so hats off to them. So that's the main point there. Is I just think that the Moscow loss is kind of huge right there.
Yeah, Lakeland seems to be a pretty good team this year. And so that is, and then Moscow a little bit up and down. Definitely record-wise, like we said, the best of those 4 teams has been Moscow this year as far as just their record.
And our 2 Washington side Big 4 teams, both still looking for their first win of the season.
Yeah, and I think so. Just a kind of a rough week overall for those 4 teams. Mm-hmm. And I think with that, we'll just talk a little bit about some of the smaller schools who are having both good seasons and a good week this week. So, Cody, let's go back over to you. Another huge shutout for Kendrick. Another game where they last week they had over 100 points. This week they almost got there again. Tell us about it.
Yes, so a man can run out of superlatives when speaking about the Kendrick Tigers. Kendrick Tigers, of course, to quickly recap all the things we endlessly repeat about them, have in fact won 4 consecutive state titles. They had 3 straight as in what's now considered Idaho Class 1A, moved up to Idaho Class 2A, and promptly won that state title last year. They have started off they've had some incredibly dominant runs, as we've chronicled in the past. I think they had a streak where they scored hundreds of unanswered points a couple years ago. But this has to be up there with anything Kendrick has ever done now. 90-0 over Lapway after 102-0 over Clearwater Valley last week. And then they had another shutout. I don't remember the specifics of the week before that, but I added it up and also talked with their young upstart coach, Ty Kep, about. They have scored 251 unanswered points right now, the Kendrick Tigers have. They've given up a total of 8 points this entire season. They've cumulatively outscored their opponents 425-8. So the question is, I feel like at this point, less, will Kendrick, be dropping any games? It almost feels like it's less that as, will anyone score on Kendrick again? Yeah. So the Tigers, a very deep, balanced team. They, a lot of the usual suspects were doing damage. Maddox Kirkland, Tanner Clemenhagen, Nathan Twite, who came back this year from injury, had a fascinating double reverse play, a rare play that he made to score a passing touchdown, even though he's a wide receiver. Colt Cap, younger brother of Ty, with 2 touchdowns. The Tigers, they're a font of talent, and they just keep going. That's about what I think you can say about it.
Yeah, I mean, just always a good team, obviously, but they seem to be better than ever this year.
Yeah.
And just, you're kind of repeating ourselves every week.
Yeah.
I mean, they just dominant wins after win, it's just kind of crazy.
They look unstoppable, really, right now.
Yeah.
I don't see any team, like Cody said, will they get scored on again is the main thing there.
I mean, Logos is good, Kamiah is good, Potlatch is good. We'll be talking about them. It'll be fascinating. Again, at this point, and I'm sorry if their fans are listening, but I feel very little hope for any of those teams against Kendrick. Maybe they'll get on the board, though.
And I think with that, we'll bounce over to actually our closest game of the week, which was Pomeroy beating Garfield-Palouse 32-18. 2 area teams in that one. But Pomeroy, another team that's year in and year out, pretty dominant from our area. They are still undefeated. In this one, we had Kaiser Harris of Pomeroy. He had 4 touchdowns, 3 different ways. 2 were rushing, 1 receiving, and also an interception return. And then we got Lane Collier of Garfield-Palouse, had a good game himself, 300 yards and 2 touchdowns rushing, and then 100 yards over 100 yards passing as well. But it was Pomeroy again with their crazy rushing attack coming out on that one. They are 4-0. And then Garfield-Palouse plays tough, though. They are 1-2 on the season. And then let's bounce back from that back to the White Pine League here. Maybe talking about what was probably the game or the matchup of the day. How about which was Logos and Prairie? Trevor, take us into that one. 2 ranked teams going at each other in that one, but Logos with the big win there.
Yeah, number 4 Logos versus number 5 Prairie. Logos totaled close to 400 yards in this White Pine League matchup. Joseph Sensing had passing and rushing touchdowns for the Knights. Baxter Covington scored on a rushing and a receiving touchdown. Gideon Haney caught another score. I mean, basically just it wasn't as close as you might have thought. Logos looks like they kind of just outclassed Prairie a little bit there. Prairie still put up a fight. I mean, scoring 12 points is something, but still 54-12 is pretty significant for Logos. Cody, you took this call from Nick Holloway. What do you say about Logos' performance here?
Right. I was also noting, of course, Logos suffered an upset. Logos is the defending league champion, even though everything we just said about Kendrick. Logos did pull off a win over Kendrick in the regular season last year before losing to Kendrick at state. And so Logos is the defending league champion, but lost one to Kamiah, which shakes up the picture here. Kamiah beat Prairie, I noticed, 22-12, and now Logos beats Prairie 54-12. Maybe puts a little wind in the Knights' sails a little bit, makes them feel like they could still be, top dogs or at least jockeying for that second spot behind Kendrick. Of course, Nick Holloway didn't have the complete box. He was very proud also what we mentioned about the Logos JV going down and beating the Orofino varsity in an 11-man game. Logos, of course, has a very deep roster. They have about 50 guys, well over half their male student body on the football program. So it's not too shocking they were able to do that.
I mean, with Logos JV not only playing an 11-man game, but beating a team a varsity team of a higher division, I mean, yeah, it seems like they'll be pretty good for maybe years to come here if they keep that up.
So is that the team that could really contend with Kendrick here?
Yeah.
We'll see.
They
Actually,
did last year.
Logos broke Kendrick's nearly 3-year winning streak in a regular season game. Obviously, Kendrick got revenge in the postseason to advance in the 2-way playoffs. But the Logos Knights, they've been growing this football program over the last several years, and last year was kind of their plant the flag moment.
Yeah, but I mean, Kendrick just has looked so dominant. But
Yeah.
it's gonna be interesting to see. That'll be an interesting one to see how they stack up again this year.
But of course, we can't leave Kamiah or Potlatch out of the picture, which are both undefeated.
Exactly, and
segueing into.
And speaking of that, let's go to Kamiah, which is having a very good season, also undefeated, ranked number 2, and another team to watch this year. Sam, tell us a little bit about their game.
Yeah, so the Cubs today, they beat Clearwater Valley 54-0. Kamiah beat Logos has suffered their lone defeat to Kamiah. It was a 22-20 result, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. And so that was a very close game, of course, for the White Pine League. And then you look at the Cubs today. They're led by quarterback Lawson Landmark. He had 224 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, some through the air, some rushing. Wide receiver Todd Roberts with 134 yards receiving. And then the Cubs were able to pretty much they scored like 30 points in the first quarter, nothing in the second quarter, and then another 24 in the third quarter for the 54-0 final. And so Kamiah just kind of rolling through their league schedule now. They're 3-0 in league, 5-0 overall. And, you got to circle some of those dates that they have, coming up with Prairie eventually and with Kendrick. Those will be games to watch for sure.
And another thing, I mean, I keep saying it every week, is Kamiah is probably one of the biggest surprises just because at how much they lost last year, but they just keep rolling, still undefeated there. And we'll just stick with keeping going down with some of these dominant and undefeated area teams. Trevor, Colfax, they beat Chewelah 46-6. You talked to Coach Kofer. Tell us a little bit about that one.
Yeah, so it was a pretty quick win for Colfax here. Riker Reed threw for a touchdown pass to Gunnar Brown and Caleb Lustig. But then pretty much after the first quarter, Colfax took out their starters. There was no point to keep playing them. They overall won 46-6, like you said. But yeah, I mean, after that, they played bench guys. Some guys like David Kofer's son, Ross Kofer, scored. Chase Harder scored an 85-yard interception return. It was like backup guys and JV guys who came in and just kind of were important for this Colfax team and helping them beat Chewelah all the way to the end.
Yeah, and then we'll wrap up with our last game. We'll kind of focus on here being Potlatch over Deary. Cody, you talked to Ryan Ball. Potlatch, another team that's always pretty good, and they're rolling again this year.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So the Loggers, what are they now? 5-0, 6-0. Let's see, where is that one in here? Yeah. 4-0. They're still that's right. They had a canceled game earlier in the season.
Right.
Anyway, but the Loggers have been dominant. They're, they're up there with Kamiah, Kendrick, Logos. It's kind of a fascinating little configuration of quality teams there at the top of the league. This week, it was a non-leaguer against smaller school Deary, which is also kind of a neighboring rival, the Potlatch Deary, feud, or I don't know if you'd call it that. But anyway, I'm sure it was extra satisfying to beat their neighboring school. They had their quarterback, Jay Marshall, leading the way as usual. Connor Carpenter out there, rushing for some touchdowns. I don't think this particular performance, it was very good, but on a night of dominating performances, it isn't up there with the most extreme. But overall, the Loggers, Ball is an old grizzled pro. I understand this is his last season on the job. He's planning to retire. And, maybe he'll go out with a bang because he's so far shepherded the Loggers to sustained success.
All right. And with that, why don't you guys come up with some players of the week?
I'll go first.
Yeah. So, Trevor, who's your player of the week for football this week?
Yeah, I'm going to take Pomeroy's Kaiser Harris. He was responsible for 4 touchdowns. He had 2 rushing touchdowns, 1 receiving, and 1 off an interception return. Kaiser Harris was just a guy that that was important for Pomeroy throughout the entire match. I mean, the game.
All right. How about you, Cody?
I've been waffling on this, but how about Maddox Kirkland of Kendrick? Up there with the 4 for 5 passing performance. All 4 of his passes, his completed passes, were scoring passes, and they amounted to more than 200 yards. So that's not too shabby. And he again spearheaded a masterclass performance. Also, my JV player of the week is Liam Van Dyken of Logos with his clutch interception in the fourth quarter to help the Knights secure that win over the 11-man Orofino Maniacs.
And Sam, how about you?
I'll pick Kamiah quarterback Lawson Landmark. Landmark stepping into the big shoes, of course, with Dave Clute being the longtime QB there in Kamiah. But Lawson, his first year as starting quarterback, has excelled. He totaled 224 yards today, had 5 touchdowns, including a 52-yard touchdown run. So he's just been a huge reason why the Cubs are as dominant as they are at 5-0.
All righty. And with that will wrap up our high school football discussion. And for those of you watching the podcast, you will see a clothing change, and Sam and Trevor will take you into some college football.
Let's start with the Vandals making a difficult trip to Missoula, 4.5 hours up the road.
Yeah, well, I mean, first off, there were just some issues pretty much right away. Montana jumped to a 17-3 lead pretty quickly in the second quarter. Montana looked like they were going to, Idaho looked like they were going to kind of get in the fight with it, kind of come back, but it just wasn't in reach for the Vandals for most of the game, most of the matchup. It was a 2-3 score game for most of the matchup, and overall kind of dominant by Montana in this game. And Idaho's offense didn't look great in the first half. The defense kind of fell apart, especially against running back Eli Gilman, who's a Walter Payton watch list player, one of the best running backs in the FCS, if not one of the best players in the FCS. And Montana is a number 4 ranked FCS school, and Idaho dropped from 8 to 12. So, pretty much dominant performance from Montana in the Little Brown Stein.
Yeah, and that running back, like Gilman, right? Is that his name?
Yeah.
He's going to be in the NFL most likely, and you could really tell every carry he took, he was just taking a bunch of Vandals with him, or evading the defense altogether. And so for Idaho, their defense they pride themselves in their defense, but they've played a lot of close games this year. They're probably not going to face a player as talented as Eli, but what takeaways can they take from this game?
Well, first off, I think that one thing important to say is they have been inconsistent.
Yeah.
Although again, I think this is the strength of this team is the defense. They let up 27 points to St. Thomas, I believe, somewhere around there, and then they let up obviously 41 points to Montana. Kind of just inconsistent play. There was one game against Utah Tech where they just dominated, didn't allow a single touchdown, let Utah Tech into Idaho territory like 3 times. Against San Jose State as well, they struggled. They couldn't really stop San Jose State, let a bunch of explosive plays. So just inconsistency from the defense. Thomas Ford Jr. said that he wants to see more consistency from the defense, and obviously that didn't come against Montana. But to be fair, Montana is also, like I said, a top 4 team. They're a top team in the FCS. But it is discouraging for the Vandals and Vandal fans to see a loss quite like that against a team like Montana, because those are the powerhouses of the SCF conference, and those are the teams you want to stay with to say, hey, we are also a powerhouse. But just it wasn't so on Saturday.
Totally. And I really liked your column this week where you tackled that exact question. What's the ceiling for Idaho? You said it's good, not great, as it has been the last couple years, where under all 3 years of Jason Eck's tenure, the Vandals made the playoffs. They won a playoff game or two, or they got the bye and they won a playoff game, and then of course they just weren't able to get past some of those powerhouse or just top teams in the FCS. Do you think that these Vandals will get back to the playoffs? And then 2, do you think that they'll be able to win a game or two and make some noise like they have been?
Yeah. So I'm not totally discouraged for the Vandals. If you're looking forward to their schedule, it's kind of a easier schedule for the Big Sky Conference. They don't have to play Montana State. The top teams that they have to play are Northern Arizona and UC Davis, and those are teams that they can beat. Those are teams also they could lose to easily. So I think the Vandals finish with a 9-3 to 7-5 record. If they go 8-4, 9-3, I think they make the playoffs. And I do think that the Vandals can steal a game in the playoffs. I think that they could win a game, but I just don't see them going all the way. I don't see a huge success from the Vandals this season. I see it's a successful first season for a culture like Thomas Ford Jr. Coming in your first year, making the playoffs and even stealing a game or two is pretty important. That's good for a first season. That's one thing that I think the Vandals themselves need to realize, and maybe fans need to realize is you can have success raising each year. So it is different. And yeah, again, I just don't see him going all the way, but I do see him making some noise, maybe in the playoffs.
Yeah, so it'll be super interesting to see, what Idaho can do, and just how far they can go. And that kind of brings us to the other first year coach, of course, across the Palouse. These guys started the season opposite of each other, and now they're kind of in similar trajectories. They've both Idaho and Wazoo have lost games that they shouldn't have. Wazoo losing that North Texas game. Idaho coming up about a total of 6 points short against both FBS opponents this year. And for Jimmy Rogers, though, you really saw Wazoo travel 5,000 feet above sea level and really find themselves. They found their offensive identity. They're able to run for the most rushing yards so far this season, 158. And their defense, other than an opening drive field goal from the Rams, the Wazoo defense held Colorado State scoreless for the remainder of the game. And both teams were scoreless in the second half. That is true, but the Cougs did exactly what they needed to do. 20-3 was the halftime score, and 20-3 was the final.
23 is a pretty significant score there, pretty much almost shutting out the Rams there. So what went well for, first off, the Jimmy Rogers defense, which he focuses on, and also kind of, it wasn't turnover free, was it? It wasn't a turnover free day for the offense.
For the offense, it was turnover free, in fact. And so Zevi Eckhouse, who threw a couple of interceptions and lost a fumble against Washington, he was turnover free of 2 touchdowns to no interceptions, no fumbles for the running backs, the receivers, or anybody really on the offense. And then on the defensive side, they won the turnover margin, they won the turnover battle in that Kenny Worthy III, just a couple plays after committing a costly pass interference penalty, was able to strip Justin Marshall, one of the Rams' best running backs, of the ball after a 16-yard gain. He forced a fumble along with safety Kel Reeder in the vicinity, and then linebacker Caleb Francel grabbed the ball and then grabbed possession. And that was in the red zone after the Rams had a couple positive plays, a big pass, a big run, and then a PI to advance down the field. And the Cougars were able to stop them just straight in their tracks in the red zone, which was pivotal. Prior to that, the Cougars, I don't think they had a red zone stop this year. And so that was just a huge turning point to see Wazoo step up, and a player in particular in Kenny Worthy, who had been here last year under Jake Dickert and, had just was moments removed from a PI penalty. And, some players that would stick in their head, but, he kind of rinsed and repeated and just kind of went back into battle and came up with a huge play for his team.
I think they had one stop against Idaho, but overall, yeah, a lot of.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah,
not letting a lot of turnover. I mean, a lot of red zone stuff. So speaking in your column, you talked about identity for this team. They found it. You said going 5,000 feet above sea level. Like many people, they going 5,000 feet above sea level. They found their identity. Tell me about the Cougs finding their identity in this game.
Yeah, Wazoo didn't really have to visit a shaman or anything at the peak of the mountain, but they were, over 5,000 feet above sea level, and they were able to do a lot of the things that they had been talking about doing all year. And that was, running the ball. And so we talked about on the defensive side where they were able to force a turnover, come up with 3 turnovers on downs, come up with a blocked field goal. On the offensive side, Wazoo was really able to run the ball. Leo Pelosi led the Cougars in rushing yards at 50 yards on the ground on 3 carries, including a 45-yard rush. And then they spread the ball around for their other running backs, who each came up with between 20 to 30-plus yards each. That's Max Woods, Kirby Voorhees, and Angel Johnson. And then Zevi Eckhouse, in his second start as Wazoo's starting quarterback after being benched early in the season, he won the job back, of course, a few weeks ago, had a solid Apple Cup performance, and then just had another solid day in Fort Collins. He ran for 30 yards. He threw 2 touchdowns. Turnover-free day, as we said, and it was just really Zevi doing everything that you kind of wanted. And then offensive coordinator Danny Freund just doing a lot of creative things as well.
Tell me about Zevi Eckhouse. You wrote an article last week about him getting his job back and how maybe important he is to this Cougs team.
Yeah, Zevi's huge. Obviously, he started the Holiday Bowl last year when John Mateer had already left for Oklahoma. And Zevi just is a huge culture guy, and he kind of, you had a starting, it's weird for this coaching staff because they had a starting caliber quarterback kind of just fall back into their lap. He entered the transfer portal briefly, but then came back when he realized there was really no other QBs coming right away. And he looked decent in spring camp. He didn't have, Jimmy Rogers said he didn't have, and Zevi would tell you this too, that he didn't have the best fall camp possible. And Jackson Potter eclipsed him in that sense. But then you look at a game like the North Texas game where Jackson Potter throws 3 interceptions. Zevi comes in for cleanup duty late in the second half, and just Rodgers described it as a spark. Zevi brought a spark to the offense, both in terms of his huddle and on-field demeanor and the way the team rallied around him, and then just the way his efficiency itself. He was 7 of 10 for 70 yards and ran for a touchdown. And so Zevi's more mobile than Jackson, and then he's just more of a finished product at this point in his career. Jackson being a sophomore, Zevi being a senior right now, in his last year of college football. And so Zevi Eckhouse provides, and we saw him make a lot of deep throws and kind of play off schedule both in the Apple Cup and against CSU. And so Zevi, he has all the intangibles, he has all the tangibles that this team needs to make the most of this season.
So before we close it out, let's keep it short here. Tell me how confident should Cougs feel moving forward?
Well, it's going to be a very hard month. Wazoo has their bye week this week. Then they hit the road to face 2 top 25 teams. They face now number 4 Ole Miss, October 11th, and they face now number 24 Virginia, who just came off a huge win over Florida State. The real measure of their season will be how they respond after 2 straight losses. If they lose these next 2 weeks, which they likely will, the measure that will be, how do they bounce back? Their 3-4 start, how do they, move on? Can they sweep Oregon State? Can they be bowl eligible? Can they get those 6 wins that they need to be bowl eligible? And I think if they can win 6 games and be bowl eligible in Rodgers year 1, that's a great year.
That's a success there.
Yeah.
So thank you for listening to The Final Whistle. I'm Trevor Junt. That's Sam Taylor. Read more at lmtribune.com. In our sports section, you'll see our columns for Tuesday Morning Quarterback this week. And just follow us for more Idaho and Washington State football coverage. Thank you for listening.